The vastness of space cracked open as the Ivran Armada, a force so colossal it blotted out the stars, emerged from hyperspace. 10,000 warships, their hulls bristling with weapons, engines burning like the torches of gods. They moved with the arrogance of conquerors, their weapons already primed for planetary bombardment. The invasion of Earth had begun. Inside the Ravager, the flagship of the fleet, Grand Marshal Xyvos stood motionless, arms folded behind his back, his violet eyes locked on the rotating blue sphere below. A primitive world. No orbital defenses. No planetary shields. A relic of a lesser age, waiting to be taken. Confirm scan results, Xyvos commanded, his voice a blade of ice. The sensor officer hesitated. Minimal defense systems detected. No active orbital fleet. Planetary military presence, limited. A pause. They are defenseless, my lord. Xyvos allowed himself a smirk. I want our bombardment platforms primed. We will make this swift. A silent ripple of anticipation passed through the bridge crew. Earth would fall like the countless others before it. The Dominion would plant its banner, and in days, the humans would either serve or perish. Then, the stars blinked out. Xyvos frowned. Report. Something is disrupting our sensors. The officer's hands flew over the controls, his voice turning frantic. I don't understand, sir. There are no energy signatures, no. A blast of light tore through the darkness. A Ivran warship, 5 kilometers long, shattered in an instant. No explosion. No warning. One moment it was there, the next, it was splintered debris, scattering like dust. Silence clamped down on the bridge. Xyvos turned, slow and deliberate. What was that? The communications officer choked on his words. We don't know. No impact signature, no projectile trace. Another ship erased. This time, the bridge screens flickered, capturing only a glimpse, a shadow in the void, something inhumanly fast, slipping between ships, striking with pinpoint precision. Xyvos clenched his jaw. This was no accident. He flicked open the command relay. All ships, scatter formation. Defensive posture. Find the source of those attacks and eradicate it. The fleet obeyed, shifting formations, their weapons primed, scanning for an enemy they could not see. Then the whispers began. Faint at first. Indistinct. Static laced with something else. Then, a Ivran officer on a secondary vessel screamed through the comms. His voice was wrong, warping with a distortion that sent ice through Xyvos' spine. They're already here. Static. A piercing shriek. Then nothing. Xyvos' claws curled into fists. This was not a battle. This was a slaughter. And they were the prey. A new voice, calm and collected, crackled through the main frequency. Human. Male. Welcome to Earth. Xyvos stiffened. This was impossible. They had jammed human frequencies. No signal should be getting through. Who speaks? He demanded. Your executioner. And then, all hell broke loose. Ships began imploding, their hulls bending inward as if something unseen had reached inside and crushed them from within. Battleships fired wildly, but their weapons found nothing. No enemy fleet. No visible threat. Xyvos snarled. Land forces. Now. Dropships rained from the sky, breaking through the atmosphere in waves of fire. Thousands of elite Ivran warriors, clad in the Dominion's most advanced armor, descended upon Earth. They would seize the planet. No matter what. But the moment they hit the ground, the world itself turned against them. Shadows moved where there were no soldiers. Gunfire erupted, but the enemy was nowhere to be seen. Screams filled the comms. Something's here. We don't know what. Static. Then another voice, cold and guttural, Darius Cade's voice. We see you. We've always seen you. Xyvos clenched his fangs. This was madness. There were no enemy readings on the battlefield. No organized resistance. But his soldiers were vanishing. He needed control. Now. All forces, regroup at the primary drop point. Defensive stance. The remaining Ivran squads complied, forming a perimeter in the ruins of a human city, their weapons aimed outward. Then, silence. Minutes passed. No gunfire. No movement. The tension was suffocating. Xyvos activated his helmet's command relay. Status report. A single response. A whisper. You were never meant to set foot here. Then the night came alive. A storm of kinetic rounds, plasma bursts, and hypersonic blades tore through the ranks. Humanity wasn't fighting a battle. They were exterminating an infestation. Ivran warriors, bred for war, trained in conquest, were ripped apart in seconds. And then, Xyvos saw him. Darius Cade. Standing atop the ruins of a fallen Ivran walker, plasma blade humming in his right hand, combat rifle resting in the other. His armor was stained in alien blood. You shouldn't have come here. Xyvos charged. His enhanced strength, his genetic superiority, it meant nothing. Darius sidestepped, faster than should be possible, bringing his blade up in a brutal arc. The Ivran commander barely blocked the strike, but Darius didn't stop. A gunshot. A blade through his ribs. A knee to the jaw. The battle wasn't a fight, it was an execution. Xyvos staggered, gasping, as Darius pressed the barrel of his rifle against his skull. 10,000 ships. Darius' voice was ice. And you thought you were the predators. Xyvos bared his fangs. You don't understand, we will return. Darius smiled. No. You won't. He pulled the trigger. The few remaining Ivran ships fled into orbit, their commanders desperate to escape the nightmare they had walked into. They fired blindly behind them, but nothing followed. No pursuit. No counterattack. Only silence. Then, as they prepared to jump to hyperspace, they saw it, Earth's final surprise. The stars bent. The void itself shifted. A weapon unlike anything in the Dominion's archives. A final, devastating piece of human ingenuity. Time fractured. And in an instant, they were gone. On Earth, Darius Cade stood amidst the wreckage, staring at the night sky. A soldier approached him. Sir, do you think they'll ever come back? Darius let out a slow breath, flexing his blood-stained hands. Then, he smirked. They can try. The sky was burning. Ivran warships, once invincible, plummeted from orbit, their hulks torn apart by weapons that should not exist. The invasion had become a massacre. On the ground, Darius Cade moved through the shattered city like a ghost. His armor was scarred, his pulse steady. He watched as the Ivran ground forces scrambled to reorganize, fear thick in the air. These weren't the conquerors they once were. They were trapped animals, cornered and desperate. His comms crackled. Black revenants in position. Orders? Darius pressed a finger to his earpiece. Keep pressure. No mercy. We finish this tonight. He switched channels. Command, status? A woman's voice, cold and precise, answered. Captain Ray Hallstrom. Their fleet is in full retreat. High Command is cutting the feed, no reinforcements coming. Darius smirked. So they've been abandoned. They just don't know it yet. Darius moved, stepping over the mangled body of a Ivran soldier, the alien's helmet crushed inward by some force beyond brute strength. They were breaking. That was good. But they weren't dead yet. Through the ruins, he spotted a battalion forming a perimeter around what remained of their command post. They'd taken the tallest intact structure, a twisted high-rise leaning like a broken tooth in the skyline. His comms buzzed again. Sir, we have movement. They're rallying. Darius didn't hesitate. Let them. He walked forward, slow and deliberate, straight into their line of sight. The Ivern saw him. Weapons snapped up. Commands were shouted. Then, silence. Darius stopped a few paces from their line. Their leader stepped forward. A commander-class Ivern, taller than the rest, armor gleaming despite the dust and fire. His face, smooth and violet, twisted in a mix of fear and rage. Human. The word was spit like venom. Darius rolled his shoulders, unimpressed. Didn't think you'd still be standing. The commander's claws flexed. You think this is over? Darius exhaled. I think you know exactly how this ends. The alien's jaw tightened. He was stalling. Darius' eyes flicked to the sides. The others were shifting, repositioning subtly. A flanking maneuver. Predictable. He smiled. If you're going to try something stupid, at least make it interesting. The commander's nostrils flared. You're a fool. You think Earth is safe? That your species has won? Darius cracked his neck. Let me ask you something. A heartbeat of silence. Then, a blur of motion. Darius moved first. Gunfire erupted, but he was already inside their guard. He grabbed the nearest Ivern by the wrist, twisted, snapping bone like brittle metal. The alien screamed, his weapon falling as Darius ripped it free, turned, and fired point blank into the next attacker. The commander lunged, Darius sidestepped, drove his elbow into the alien's throat, and whirled the stolen rifle up under his jaw. The Ivern's skull cracked like glass. Chaos exploded. The black revenants struck from the shadows. Snipers took precision shots, each round bursting through skulls, chests, armor like paper. Grenades tore bodies apart in violet sprays of alien blood. The Ivern fell in seconds. The commander, bleeding, choking, staggered back. Darius was on him before he could react. He drove a combat knife into the alien's stomach, twisted. You talk too much. The commander collapsed, gurgling. Darius straightened, breathing heavy. Around him, the battlefield was silent. The last Ivern survivor, wounded, shaking, dropped his rifle. Mercy. Darius lifted his gun. Wrong planet. A single shot. The battle was over. His comm buzzed. Hallstrom. You're gonna want to see this. Darius turned, eyes narrowing. What is it? Their last ships. They aren't retreating. His brow furrowed. Explain. Static. Then, they're going into orbit, but they aren't leaving the system. Darius' grip tightened. Something was wrong. He looked up, past the burning skyline, past the clouds, toward the stars. The stars. They were disappearing. His chest tightened. No. Not disappearing. Something was consuming them. Command, he barked into the comms, get me a direct feed from orbital scanners. Now. The response came instantly. We're already tracking it. Sir, you're not gonna believe this. The feed blinked into his visor display. The remaining Ivern ships were gone. Not destroyed. Not fleeing. Gone. Swallowed by something vast, something unnatural. Hallstrom's voice was quiet. What the hell is that? Darius stared, pulse thudding. The Ivern had awoken something they shouldn't have. And now, it was watching. Sir? Darius exhaled. Get everyone underground. Now. Do you know what's happening? Darius turned his gaze back to the sky. I think we just found out why no one's conquered Earth before. The silence was wrong. Darius Cade stood in the middle of the wreckage, boots planted on broken alien bodies, looking up at the sky that should have been empty. The Ivern fleet should have been gone, either annihilated or retreating. But they weren't running. They weren't fighting. They were disappearing. His earpiece crackled. Hallstrom's voice was tight. Commands lost all telemetry on the remaining ships. They didn't jump. No signatures. No warp trails. No wreckage. Just gone. Darius' grip tightened around his rifle. That's not possible. It gets worse. Our orbital scans picked up something before their ships vanished. A beat. It wasn't them. Darius exhaled slowly. He had spent years fighting wars across shattered colonies, facing horrors most men could never comprehend. He knew when something was beyond war. This wasn't strategy. It wasn't a counterattack. It was something else. Get underground, he ordered. Now. Hallstrom hesitated. Sir? You heard me. Before she could answer, his helmet display flickered, static creeping in like rot. Then, a voice that wasn't Hallstrom's. You don't belong here. A whisper. Wrong. Ancient. His pulse spiked. Who is this? No response. Just breathing. Something deep, something that echoed in ways it shouldn't. Then, a scream in the distance. Darius turned sharply. It wasn't human. It wasn't Ivern either. His instincts screamed at him to move, but he forced himself to stay still, listening. The battlefield should have been quiet, the last of the invaders dead. But something else was out there. A soldier's voice cut through the comms, frantic. Captain, I need help. We have. Static. Darius was already moving, sprinting through the ruins. He reached the last reported position of his squad, but there was no battle. No bodies. Just their weapons, abandoned on the ground. That was impossible. Human soldiers don't just vanish. He scanned the area, breathing steady, forcing logic into his thoughts. There had to be an explanation. Then the whisper came back. Closer this time. You woke it up. Darius whirled, raising his rifle. His HUD was glitching, struggling to keep up. Heat signatures flickered in and out. Something was moving, but it wasn't there. A flicker, a shape in the corner of his vision. Humanoid. But wrong. Stretched. Twisted. It was gone before he could focus on it. He clenched his teeth. Show yourself. Nothing. He switched to wideband comms. All revenants, regroup at fallback coordinates. We're leaving. No answer. Then, laughter. Not human. Not Ivern. Something else. Something mocking. His hand flexed around his rifle. Not fear. Instinct. A voice, sharp and clear, cut through the static. Hallstrom. Sir, do you see this? Darius turned back to the sky. His breath caught. The stars were flickering. Not like power failures. Not clouds or debris. Something was blocking them out. Something massive. His earpiece crackled again. This is not a Dominion weapon. I know. Hallstrom's breathing was uneven. Sir, what did we just wake up? He didn't have an answer. But the whisper did. You were never meant to leave this planet. Then the sky broke open. The sky fractured like glass. Darius Cade felt it before he saw it. A pressure shift, as if the atmosphere itself was rejecting reality. The stars, the ones that hadn't vanished yet, shuddered. The Ivern fleet, once poised for conquest, had already ceased to exist. Not destroyed. Not defeated. Erased. Hallstrom's voice cut through his earpiece, sharp with barely controlled panic. Sir, I think we have a problem. Darius forced himself to keep his breathing steady. You think? I ran scans. Whatever this is, it's not reading as mass, energy, or, hell, I don't even know. There's nothing in the records. But sir, it's moving. Darius' grip tightened on his rifle. Direction? A pause. Then, her voice turned cold. Here. For the first time in years, Darius felt it. Not fear. Instinct. Something his bones recognized before his brain did. It was coming for them. He switched comms. All revenants, listen up. I don't care where you are, get underground. Now. Static. Then a response. Sir, we've got something, it's inside the perimeter. Gunfire erupted. Screams followed. Darius was already moving. He sprinted through the rubble, rifle raised, eyes scanning. His HUD glitched again. Distorted outlines flickered on his display, things that weren't there. But then, they were. A shape moved between collapsed buildings, but it wasn't Ivran. It wasn't human. It was wrong, tall, shifting, its form impossible to focus on. A soldier stumbled out of cover, panting, eyes wide. It's in my head. It's a blur. A flash of movement too fast to comprehend. Then, he was gone. Not killed. Not torn apart. Gone. Darius skidded to a stop, rifle aimed at nothing. He'd seen men die in every way possible. This was different. Hallstrom's voice cracked through the comms, frantic. Cade, we need to fall back. He wasn't listening. His instincts screamed at him to move, but he didn't. He needed to see. Then, the whisper returned. You are not welcome. It was everywhere and nowhere. Darius exhaled. Not my problem. He fired. The shot went wide, or through, he wasn't sure. His mind rebelled against what he was seeing. The thing turned toward him. A shape, shifting, folding like liquid shadow, but somehow it had eyes, or something close enough. They locked onto him, and for the first time in his life, Darius felt hunted. His legs moved before his mind caught up. He ran. Gunfire rattled around him, human weapons tearing through empty air. The thing wasn't dodging. It wasn't moving in any way that made sense. More screams. Soldiers vanishing mid-step. Others dropping their weapons, clutching their heads as if something inside them was breaking. Darius didn't stop running. He didn't look back. Hallstrom. Get me extraction, now. Static. Then, you need to get lower. Deep as you can. I think it doesn't follow underground. A single option, then. Darius turned hard, sprinting toward the ruins of an old bunker. His boots pounded against cracked pavement, breath ragged. The thing was still there, watching, waiting. Then, it stepped forward. His vision flickered. It wasn't teleporting. It wasn't running. It was simply there. He threw himself into the bunker hatch just as reality seemed to bend behind him. The second the steel door slammed shut, the whispers stopped. Silence. His breath hammered in his chest. Hallstrom's voice came through. You still alive? Darius pressed his head against the cold wall, exhaling. Barely. A pause. Then, sir. I don't think it can go underground. Darius looked up at the ceiling. The solid rock. The depth. That explained why there were still humans left on Earth. He clicked his comm status on remaining forces. Silence. Then, a grim response. Scattered. We lost most of the units on the surface. Darius exhaled. And the thing? A beat. Then, it's still waiting. Of course, it was. Darius leaned back, closing his eyes for half a second. Then he smiled. Fine. Let it wait. They weren't going anywhere. But neither was it.